These grave sites mark the final resting places of legendary child stars, whose early performances captivated audiences before tragedy struck, cutting short lives that burned too bright. Judith Barcy was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills after she was murdered in July 1988 at just 10 years old by her father. The Land Before Time voice actress was killed alongside her mother in a murder-suicide and was laid to rest after the funeral service. Carl Switzer was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery after he was shot and killed in January 1959 at age 31 during a dispute over money. The alfalfa from our gang was killed in an argument and buried after his funeral service, a tragic end for the former child star. Scotty Beckett was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills after he died from a barbiturate overdose in May 1968 at age 38. The Our Gang actor died under suspicious circumstances and was buried after his funeral service following a troubled life. Bobby Driscoll was buried at Hart Island Potter's Field in New York after he died from heart failure in March 1968 at age 31. The Peter Pan voice actor died homeless and was buried in a pauper's grave, only discovered a year later in a tragic Disney story. Heather O'Rourke was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park after she died from cardiac arrest in February 1988 at just 12 years old during surgery. The Poltergeist actress who famously said, "They're here," died during the operation and was buried after her tragic funeral service. Bridget Anderson was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills after she died from a heroin overdose in May 1997 at age 21. The Savannah Smiles actress died from her addiction and was buried after her funeral service as another child, star lost to drugs. Rusty Hamer was buried at a Louisiana cemetery after he died by suicide by gunshot in January 1990 at age 42. The Make Room for Daddy actor from The Danny Thomas Show killed himself and was buried after his funeral service, battling depression and a failed career. Brad Renfro was buried at Red House Cemetery in Tennessee after he died from a heroin overdose in January 2008 at age 25. The Client actor died from his addiction and was buried after his funeral service as another child star lost to drugs. Matthew Garber was buried at a cemetery in England after he died from hemorrhagic necrotizing pancreatitis in June 1977 at age 21. The Mary Poppins actor who played Michael Banks died from the disease and was buried after his funeral service. John Eric Hexum was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery after he died from an accidental shooting in October 1984 at age 26. The Voyagers teen actor was killed while playing Russian roulette with a blank gun and was buried after his funeral service in a tragic accident. Brandon Lee was buried at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle after he was killed by a prop gun in April 1993 at age 28. The Crow actor who was a child martial arts star was accidentally shot on set and was buried after his funeral service beside his father, Bruce Lee. Michelle Thomas was buried at a New York cemetery after she died from stomach cancer in December 1998 at age 30. The Family Matters actress who played Myra died from the cancer and was buried after her funeral service, also known from The Cosby Show. Aaliyah was buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in New York after she died in a plane crash in August 2001 at age 22 in the Bahamas. The singer and actress who started as a child, Star died in the accident and was buried after her funeral service, known for Romeo Must Die. Mickey Rooney was buried at Hollywood Forever Cemetery after he died from natural causes in April 2014 at age 93. The Andy Hardy child star was buried after his funeral service, celebrating his 9-decade career that began in childhood. Peggy Ann Garner was cremated after she died from pancreatic cancer in October 1984 at age 52 in her California home. The Tree Grows in Brooklyn child actress who won a juvenile Oscar had her ashes scattered after her memorial service. Jane Withers was cremated after she died from natural causes in August 2021, at age 95 in her California home peacefully. The Bright Eyes child star who became Josephine the Plumber in Comet commercials had her ashes scattered after her memorial service. Deanna Durbin was buried at a cemetery in France after she died from natural causes in April 2013 at age 91, living as a recluse. The 100 Men and a Girl Child singing star was laid to rest after her funeral service having retired from Hollywood. Gloria Jean was cremated after she died from heart failure in August 2018 at age 92 in her California home. The Never Give a Sucker and Even Break Child actress had her ashes scattered after her memorial service. Benita Granville was cremated after she died from lung cancer in October 1988 at age 65 in her California home. The Nancy Drew child actress, who later became a Lassie producer, had her ashes scattered after her memorial service. Margaret Hamilton was cremated after she died from a heart attack in May 1985 at age 82 in New York. The Wizard of Oz actress who played the Wicked Witch was typecast by her green role and had her ashes scattered after her memorial service. Burt Lahr was buried at Union Field Cemetery in New York after he died from pneumonia and cancer in December 1967 at age 72. The Wizard of Oz actor who played the Cowardly Lion was buried after his funeral service. Ray Bolger was cremated after he died from bladder cancer in January 1987 at age 83 in his California home. The Wizard of Oz dancer who played the Scarecrow had his ashes scattered after his memorial service celebrating his vaudeville career. Jack Haley was buried at Holy Cross Cemetery in California after he died from a heart attack in June 1979 at age 81. The Wizard of Oz actor who played the Tin Man was buried after his funeral service. Toto, the dog, whose real name was Terry, was buried on the Spitz family property in California after she died from natural causes in September 1945 at age 11. The Wizard of Oz dog was buried on the property with a memorial plaque. Brandon DeWild was buried at Pine Lawn Memorial Park in New York after he died in a car accident in July 1972 at age 30. The Shane Child actor who played Joey died in a Denver crash and was buried after his funeral service with his famous promise line remembered. Jack Wilde was cremated after he died from oral cancer in March 2006 at age 53 in his England home from alcoholism. The Oliver Child star who played the Artful Dodger had his ashes scattered after his memorial service struggling with throat cancer. Margaret O'Brien was buried at a California cemetery after she died from natural causes in March 2024 at age 87 with a distinguished career. The Meet Me in St. Louis child actress who won a juvenile Oscar was buried after her funeral service. Tony Dow was buried at a California cemetery after he died from cancer in August 2022 at age 77 following a distinguished career. The Leave It to Beaver child actor who played Wally and became a director was buried after his funeral service. Davy Jones was cremated after he died suddenly from a heart attack in February 2012 at age 66 in his Florida home. The Monkees child star and teen idol had his ashes scattered after his memorial service. Ricky Nelson was buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Hollywood Hills after he died in a plane crash in December 1985 at age 45. The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet child star and teen idol was buried after his funeral service. Gary Coleman was cremated after he died from a brain hemorrhage in March 2010 at age 42 from a fall at his Utah home. The Different Strokes child star who played Arnold Jackson had his ashes scattered after his funeral service following a troubled life. Dana Plato died by suicide from a drug overdose in May 1999 at age 34 from prescription drugs in her motorhome the day after an interview. The Different Strokes child actress who played Kimberly Drummond died from Lortab and Valium and was buried after her funeral service. Corey Haim was buried at Pardes Shalom Cemetery in California after he died from pneumonia complications in March 2010 at age 38. The Lost Boys child star died from pneumonia and was buried after his funeral service following decades of addiction, struggles. Sawyer Sweeten died by suicide by gunshot in April 2015 at just 19 years old at his Texas family home from depression struggles. The Everybody Loves, Raymond Child, star twin killed himself and was buried after his funeral service, devastating his cast and family. Lee Thompson Young died by suicide by gunshot in August 2013 at age 29 in his Los Angeles apartment from depression and bipolar disorder. The Disney child star from the famous Jet Jackson killed himself and was buried. After his funeral service, James Dean was buried at Park Cemetery in Fairmount, Indiana, after he was killed in a car crash in September 1955 at just 24 years old. The Rebel Without Cause actor who started young was killed in his Porsche Spyder and was buried after his funeral service with fans mourning. Natalie Wood was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park after she died from drowning in November 1981 at age 43 under mysterious circumstances. The Child, star who appeared in Miracle on 34th Street at age 8, was laid to rest after her funeral service, with the circumstances remaining controversial for decades. Sal Mineo was buried at Sunset View Cemetery in New York after he was murdered by stabbing in February 1976 at age 37. The Rebel Without Cause child actor was killed in an alley and was buried after his funeral service in a Hollywood tragedy. Dominique Dunn was buried at Westwood Village Memorial Park after she was murdered by strangulation in November 1982 at age 22 by her ex-boyfriend. The Poltergeist child actress was killed and buried after her funeral service, highlighting domestic violence. Rebecca Schaefer was cremated after she was murdered by shooting in July 1989 at age 21 by a stalker at her apartment doorstep. The My Sister Sam child actress had her ashes scattered after her memorial service, which led to stalking laws being changed. Dana Hill was cremated after she died from a stroke caused by diabetes complications in July 1996 at age 32 in a California hospital. The National Lampoon's European Vacation child actress had her ashes scattered after her memorial service following lifelong health struggles. Samantha Smith was buried at a Maine cemetery after she died in a plane crash in August 1985 at just 13 years old while returning home. The child peace activist and actress died in the accident and was buried after her funeral service during the Cold War era. Jet Travolta was cremated after he died from a seizure in January 2009 at age 16 in a Bahamas vacation home bathroom. John Travolta's son had his ashes scattered after his memorial service amid autism and Scientology controversy involving Kawasaki disease. Benjamin Keough was cremated after he died by suicide by gunshot in July 2020 at age 27 in his California home from depression. Elvis Presley's grandson and Lisa Marie's son had his ashes scattered after his memorial service and was buried at Graceland. Peaches Geldof was buried at a cemetery in England after she died from a heroin overdose in April 2014 at age 25 at her home. Bob Geldof's daughter, who appeared on TV as a child, died from drugs and was buried after her funeral service, leaving behind 2 young sons. Bobby Christina Brown was buried at a New Jersey cemetery after she died from drowning with drugs in her system in July 2015 at age 22. Whitney Houston's daughter, who appeared on reality TV, died in a bathtub and was buried after her funeral service beside her mother. Aaron Carter was cremated after he died from drowning in his bathtub in November 2022 at age 34 with drugs in his system in his California home. Nick Carter's brother, who sang I Want Candy as a child star, had his ashes scattered after his memorial service. Brittany Murphy was buried at Forest Lawn Hollywood Hills after she died from pneumonia and cardiac arrest in December 2009 at age 32 under mysterious circumstances. The child actress who started young and clueless was buried after her funeral service, with her husband dying just months later.